Egypt, not too far from the banks of the Nile. Excavators from Lund University in Sweden are hard at work. An ancient quarry that dates back thousands of years and is about to produce fruit is the focus of their efforts. You have to understand that the group is currently unearthing something significant, and although they are not yet aware of it, it appears that their discovery has a connection to one of the most well-known leaders of ancient Egypt. At the point when researchers investigated an African quarry, they uncovered a last connect to Egypt. Tutankhamun was the pharaoh of antiquated Egypt for about a long time from 1333 BCE. He rose to the high position when he was around 8 or 9. Thus he didn't go with political choices all alone. All things being equal, Tutankhamun had various significant guides who helped him out. Tutankhamun was especially very much viewed as a pharaoh during his rule. However, perplexingly, he turned out to be maybe the most popular of the relative multitude of old Egyptian pioneers. This is to a great extent down to his unblemished resting place, which was revealed in 1922 by the English excavator Howard Carter. Following the revelation, Tutankhamun's burial place and the articles found inside it proceeded to catch the public's creative mind. The pharaoh went into well-known creative mind, and right up to the present day, he stays a wellspring of incredible interest. In that capacity, any new disclosures connected with the figure are of gigantic worth. Over at the old quarry lately, the Swedish archeological group's revelation in 2019 couldn't be straightforwardly followed to Tutankhamun himself, yet it seemed, by all accounts, to be connected with one of his direct relations. Moreover, the find may likewise have the option to reveal a few insight into Old Egypt and its people group's rehearses. The site being referred to is known as Jebel silsila, and it's situated around 40 miles from the Egyptian city of Aswan. Arranged along the stream, Nile, Jebel silsila was once a significant quarrying site. What's more, two before long find, rock was extricated here from one or the other side of the waterway for a long while. Jebel silsila at first turned into a significant spot for quarrying during the 18th line of Old Egypt between around 1549 to 1292 BCE. Eventually during this period, Egyptian development laborers began to utilize sandstone rather than limestone, and the previous could be found at Jebel silsila. A few structures in noticeable areas in Old Egypt were collected with stone removed from the Jebel silsila site. This rock was recovered from the earth and formed into stone blocks known as gifts. These thusly were then used to develop various structures. As a matter of fact, stone from Jebel silsila is accepted to have been utilized in most of Old Egypt's most noteworthy sanctuaries. This incorporates developments at Luxor, Karnak, Quiet on Bowen, Medinet Habu, and that the actual quarry sanctuaries have been found, which had evidently been raided by individuals running tasks there. The fundamental lord of Jebel silsila is the crocodile god Sabic, who was accepted to control the waters, likewise connected with the force of Egyptian pioneers' military strength and rightness. Although it had taken all that time to excavate, this had actually been discovered a few years earlier. After all, there had been a lot of water on the underground side. In order to gain access to the tomb's contents, the archaeological team had used pumps to remove the water, and after removing a sufficient amount of the H20, after that, the experts could use their hands to sort through the bones and artifacts after the remains were found. The significance of it was then discussed by John Ward with Life Science. He stated that 2 years ago, we were actually sitting in the soup, and since human remains cannot be seen in the water, everything was done by touch. In the meantime, another impressive discovery had been made by the team at Jebel silsila. They discovered a necropolis that housed both adults and children, which seemed to indicate that the location was once home to a large population, a few months prior to the announcement of this burial location. In the meantime, news of additional discoveries spread from Jebel silsila. Several sculptures depicting important families had been discovered this time. There were 6 altogether, and they were assessed to be around 3,500 years of age. As we have seen, the Jebel silsila site has been extremely productive in terms of archaeology in recent years. However, The most significant discovery was possibly made public in February 2019. At that point, the project team announced to the world that they had discovered a unique species of sphinx. In general, a sphinx is a mythological creature whose head contains the body of a lion. Even though they are depicted differently, they were a part of ancient Egyptian and Greek culture. And Egypt's Great Sphinx of Giza is probably the most well-known example that has survived. However, this particular sphinx at Jebel el-Silsila was unusual in that it was discovered in a quarry cavity and was thought to have been left there by the Romans. Within it, the experts also found hundreds of engraved stone pieces and a carving of a snake sitting atop the sphinx. The sphinx's head appeared to have been slightly protruding from the ground for some time before the entire structure could be revealed. As a matter of fact, getting down to the body of the cutting was a remarkable accomplishment. The tractors had expected to dig through immense measures of trash to get to its base. Given that the statue was approximately 3.5 meters tall, it is not surprising that it required such effort to reveal everything. Yet, it was the size of the Sphinx that struck specialists as extraordinary. Instead, everything to do with its top was involved. The world's most famous sphinxes typically have human heads on them. However, the archaeologists also discovered a young sphinx because this was a cross-sphinx, meaning that it shared the main crosslinks carving with the head of a ram. It has been suggested that this smaller artifact might have been a practice piece made by a new sculptor. Additionally, there were small pieces of stone and metal all over the place, indicating that it may have been used for sculpting. Experts say that the Crayon Sphinx was probably made when Tutankhamun's grandfather, a man who was up to third, was in power. Mission director Maria Nilsson told Live Science that when Tutankhamun's grandfather died, the sculptures he had ordered may have been thrown away there, but they may now be more well known. It is believed that his grandfather, who led the men up to third, was a more successful leader when he served as pharaoh for a time in the 14th century BCE. The Kennington died eventually, and his son took over as leader. This is Tutankhamun, who was 8 or 9 years old when he became pharaoh. However, despite the fact that he himself passed away less than a decade later, his rule did result in the return of Egypt's ancient religion and the reopening of the temples. Tutankhamun is one of the most well-known ancient Egyptian pharaohs today, despite his relatively unexceptional reign. In fact, John Manship, who was writing a foreword for the Howard Carter book, The Discovery of the Tomb of Tutankhamun and Matchups, made this point in a rather succinct manner. In other words, the pharaoh, who was once one of the least esteemed pharaohs in Egypt, has become in depth the most renowned. As we mentioned earlier, Tutankhamun's remarkable legacy began after his tomb was discovered in 1922. A rather bizarre rumor emerged as a result of the worldwide outrage that this caused in the media. Lord Carnarvon heard that Tutankhamun's burial site was cursed shortly after the early death of a person involved in the discovery. In point of fact, another tour began in 2019 and will conclude in Cairo 3 years later. If nothing else, this tour demonstrates that the general public still has a strong desire to learn more about Tutankhamun, despite the fact that his resting place has been discovered for the first time almost a century ago. The recent discovery of Jebel el-Silsila, which appears to have been made during the time of the younger pharaoh, will likely pique the interest of a lot of people due to the fact that a man up to third was so closely related to him. The sculpture appeared to have suffered some minor damage, but nothing so obvious as to necessitate the removal of the piece. As a result, a new theory has been proposed that may help explain things. Nelson explained to the publication that sculpting projects started while a man was alive may have capitalized on his death. She says that one of the things we're thinking about is whether or not the statue was left behind because of the change in rulers. Certainly, the Jebel el-Silsila site still holds many secrets about ancient Egypt, and figuring them out could help us learn more about this powerful civilization. For instance, the process of stone mining itself may reveal some information about the society as a whole. Archaeological finds of Jebel el-Silsila could likewise reveal insight into strict traditions and practices predominant in antiquated Egypt. In addition, there is a possibility that something can be learned about the politics and dominant ideologies of the time. Of course, much more archaeological work will need to be done before any solid conclusions can be made about some of the mysteries of ancient Egypt, but work will continue until then. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. If you liked the video, give it thumbs up. As always, subscribe to our channel to see more great videos. Thanks for watching.